Hello everybody! Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a build that I did recently. Now I know this is a bit of a long video, but I really wanted to show a time-lapse that went into detail about what I did to create this structure. This structure is a courthouse in Indiana in the United States. When I first saw this courthouse, I just knew that I had to build it. It's got these big, beautiful arching windows and this amazing rooftop design with a clock tower. I just fell in love with it. So the first thing I did when doing this building is I had to pick a good block palette for it. Now the building itself does not have a lot of color. It's a fairly older building, so I had some options. I could have gone with quartz and bone block, could have gone with some woods, but I decided to go with sandstone and birch, as those two are very similar, but they complement each other just enough to get there's a little bit of contrast in your details. They also both have stairs and slabs, which is really helpful when detailing. So right now I'm just working on this front section here, and the lucky thing about this building is that it's symmetrical, so I can actually take that half that I'm doing right now and just flip it over to the other side and then get the middle staircase going here. The middle staircase was pretty important for me to get the scale right on those pillars and the staircase in the right position, and I think I did a pretty good job with scaling it correctly with my build here. Detailing one side of it, and then of course I'm going to flip it over. Getting those pillars to be just the right amount of detail. I don't want to over detail them, but I don't want to under detail them either. See, an important thing that I do when building a real life structure is exaggerating just a little bit. So in this real life structure, I will link the reference images down below and probably put one on the screen as well. This building has a lot of details, but also the in-between parts where the windows are, they can be a little flat. I mean, they're curved in quite a bit, but it's a little flat, so I exaggerate. Like that rim going around the middle part and the top part there, I really exaggerate that feature to be able to bring out a lot of detail. I'm also increasing my scale quite a bit so that I can do much larger windows, larger doorways, making it very large overall. I will worry about the interior after. The exterior of this building is much more important to me. Alright, so once I'm pretty much done the bottom layer, I start working on the top front. So I'm kind of detailing this build as I go along, which is different from how I normally build things. But when I'm building things kind of loosely off of reference art that I don't have a lot of angles or when I'm using a lot more of my imagination, I tend to block it out and get everything scaled correctly before I start detailing. But because I have so many images of this building, I just was detailing as I went along, and I found that motivated me quite a lot to continue going because I could see my progress very easily and very quickly. This building actually didn't take me too long. Each clip you see here is about 30 minutes of building. Some of them are an hour, some of them are a little shorter, so it wasn't a super long time, probably 6 or 7 hours of building in total, and that's without the interior. I am building an interior for this building, however, I did not do it on time-lapse because it's very difficult to get Replay Mod to film interior. So here I've got another one of those ledges up top, and this is one that is very detailed in the real life structure, so I was sure to really exaggerate that as much as I could. There's also a little gap between the detail and the roof, and I really tried to get that in there because it's kind of needed. You need this balance between the really over detailed areas and then a really simplistic area. The next thing I struggled with here were the front pillars, and you can see on the reference image we have some pillars and there's 2 of them, and they struggle with there being 2 of them. We don't really have enough room for that, so I end up tearing down the original thing I do where I have 2 pillars and I just build 1, but I kind of give it a design where it kind of hints that it has maybe 2 pillars or 2 main structures attached to it. And I really like the way that that looks and turns out. It's different from the real life structure, but I think it ends up looking very nice. This big archway on top of these pillars is very important to me to get right because it's a very big focal point in the real life structure, so I really wanted to nail this. And of course it has to have a big window going on top of that to detail the roof, so it's overall a very, very important feature that I did not want to mess up for sure. Here on this roof part is something I struggled with a little bit. The roof around this window is actually jutting out a little bit, so it's not perfectly flat across like I have it built here. So I had to use a little bit of prismarine and some extra terracotta to build that out the correct amount, but in the end I think it worked out fairly nicely, and it gives some nice detail to that roof without having to over detail it. Obviously the terracotta and the prismarine don't have stairs and slabs, so this is one of the easier ways to detail this. And it stays true to the original building, of course. And there's the front of the structure, pretty much finished. Now I'm going to add in the bright red door to pop some color into this building. And with the door, I also add a birch wood frame going around it, and that helps add some depth and detail to that. This is a real life structure that I have never seen in my life. I heard about it from Dakota, and after I saw this structure, I knew I had to build it, but I didn't ever see it. So I had to do a lot of research and look at images online, figure out how to build it. So if something is not perfectly accurate in one little corner, I'm kind of okay with that because I'm still proud of the fact that I managed to get it to look so lifelike just based on a couple images on Google and some aerial views and some research on what the interior looks like and such. Along the side here, we've got to start making the windows a little different. So far that front box there, that's our main box, those windows are all pretty similar. Now on this side here, we start getting out of the archway windows and we get into some more square or rectangle windows. So that's a pretty important difference here, because now we won't have that big single archway. We'll have a rectangle, which ends up, when I first paste it in, I have to just extend it a little bit, and this is kind of the lazy way to do this, but it makes it so that I can keep the details very similar, because this is a connecting piece, and although I want it to be different, I still do want it to be very similar. The trim that I'm doing continues all the way along the building, just like in the real life building. Continues along. Obviously the trim that I'm doing is a little bit more detailed than what's on the real life building, but it really helps to exaggerate those details and really get them across. In this front section here, I'm finally changing up the basement windows there. So I do a slightly different design than what I had going on in the bottom parts of the front area there. And I'm getting in some more narrow windows. And I am detailing these completely differently by hand. And that starts adding in some differences. So although we've got the same blocks going on here, it is different. And it really helps bring the building together by using different types of details but sticking with the same style of details, because in the real life structure these windows are not the same all the way around, but they do have very similar details and trim going around them. This next part here was something I struggled with quite a lot, because in the real life structure you've got three pillars going up here, and two of the ones on the end are kind of double pillars, and for this I managed to kind of pull off the look without adding in a lot of depth or too many layers of detail, because I found I didn't want to sink in that wall too much. So I was able to use the birch planks to just give just enough detail or hints at those little pillars without actually bringing them out too far from where the window panes are. I really like the way that that turned out in the end, and it still looks like it could support the window that's going to go on top of that in a second. Alright, so really important here, I'm kind of lining up my roof, because I want this roof on this section to be the exact same height as the roof on the main section, whereas that middle section you see in there is a little lower, and it's not going to be built up as tall as the other ones either. It's a connecting narrow section. Alright, so now I'm working at this window area, and this area is kind of like the front, except it's more of a smaller version. I end up having to use / move to move the pillars to the position I want, because originally I don't get them exactly in the right position. But I just love the way that these windows are. I think if I wasn't building a real life structure, I would never think to do windows like this up on a roof, but doing the research with this building and really looking at all of the details and trying to portray them accurately, it really helps me as a builder think of different designs to do. I find that really, really fun in the building process. This is not something I would normally do at all. There are a lot of details on this structure, and along the roof here there are a lot of different windows, so I'm adding in a little one right now. And although I don't get all of the roof structures, I do try to get most of them. So there are what looks like some ventilation systems, or maybe like air conditioning systems, heating systems. I'm not really sure what it is, but on top of the roof it looks like that's there. I didn't build that in, but I did build in all of the windows and chimneys that I could possibly see. So you'll see me building a window just now in this corner, and that's pretty accurate placement to where it is in the real building. It is also symmetrical in the real building, so you don't just have a chimney on this side, you have a chimney on both sides of it. I find pretty interesting that that's there in the real building. Now we're going to move down to this front section. So for this front section, I was a little bit lazy in that I just rotated around the front section that I did first. Obviously on this side there are no staircases to get in, it's just sort of a balcony. But after I mark it out and put a small section of that in, I can adjust it to get it the exact way that I want, and I think it turns out very, very nice in the end after I adjust it all. It's not exactly the same. I did go through and detail a lot of it very differently. As you can see, I'm kind of shaving off different areas, making sure all the trim is accurate, getting in some details on the front where I took off those stairs, and it ends up looking very nice. After this, I start lining up the roof up here, and I'm also very kind of lazy for this. As I go across, I kind of realized that I could probably copy and paste the roof from the other section too. However, you can tell that I'm trying to be as efficient as possible, but also not be super lazy. I want it to not be perfectly symmetrical. I want it to have some differences. So I copy and paste small sections over as opposed to getting the entire front rotated over in one move. The windows and walls going in here are going to be different from the front in that they're not big archways, and they're detailed a lot differently. On the top wall, we'll see this a lot more than on the bottom one here. So now you can see I'm flipping that section to the back, and that's a pretty important wall edit movement because now I can get a little flight around and see how I'm doing. That's just kind of what I do while I'm building. I want to see my progress, see how everything is going, and see if my size is all lined up. Now I'm going to start on this window here. I really like the way that this particular window frame turned out because I didn't have a lot of room to get these two separate windows in. So instead of doing one big window, I had to do two small ones to keep it accurate to the real life building. But with very little room, I think I pulled it off pretty well, and also adding in some depth with that nice sandstone layer going in between them as like a little windowsill or trim going around them. And then paste this side in 2 more times, get the effect across, and fill in the balcony there. And that's this side pretty much done. We just got to get our doorway in and flip it across, and that's it. So for the doorway here, I didn't actually put in the big red door. I left it open, and this will be kind of nice for the interior because it'll let some light in, and it'll also let players walk through if I end up using this as a map build. So now we're filling in the roof here, and we're getting ready to build the top section of this, but before that I've got to do some finishing touches here. We can see another chimney going in that I had forgot previously. As I'm doing this, I'm always checking back at my reference image to make sure that I didn't miss anything too major. And once I get that all flipped over, I'm going to start on the top section. So for the top section here, I first start with a little circle window, and this is a really challenging window for me because it's such a small circle, and getting really small circles to look good in Minecraft is kind of a challenge, but I think I pulled it off all right. I put some black wool back there instead of glass panes because it's so tiny, it's not really much point in having you be able to see through there. Now I mark out my center of the building and start getting ready to put my top structure in. Now this was a very challenging section for me. because there's such a detailed section of the build, this kind of clock tower that goes on top of it, and it's so different from the rest of the building, which was kind of simple, easy build. Now I've got this very circular, symmetrical top piece that goes on it, and getting that to blend in with the rest of the building is quite a challenge, because I was happy with the building as it was right now. It didn't really need this top piece in my opinion. However, I am trying to make it accurate to the real life building, and this is another example of how building a real life structure can kind of challenge you as a builder, because where I would normally stop, for this I had to continue and keep going and keep adding more details, and that really helped to improve the build even further. So as I continue with this, you guys are going to see that it's actually a very simple piece to do, because I only have to do one side and then I can copy it and rotate it all the way around. It's not that hard to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this time lapse so far. I'm going to stop voicing over right now while I finish off this structure. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.